It's all right. Beskar's here.
Good evening and welcome to BattleComm Community. I am your host, Paul. Welcome everybody for a Sunday night usual chat. Tonight, we got our usual co-hosts. We have Henny, Joe, and Tuck.
Hey, cats and kittens, what's going on?
Oh my God, you're here.
I know, right? And better yet, I brought Puck Davian with me, finally reunited, baby. That's right. And you know who else we brought with us? Bishop Steiner, cats and kittens. Say hello.
Lies. There is no Bishop Steiner here. Oh, wait. No. Okay, I am here. I'm just not in Canada with the rest of you. Sorry.
Yeah.
The voice from behind the
I'm
curtain.
getting confused by these orders.
Yeah.
He's using Tuck's mic
Right?
from when he's usually here.
That's
Yes.
Well, paradoxically, we actually have our field reporter in the studio with us tonight, despite the fact he spent the better part of his afternoon in a field.
That's right.
Which we will talk about a little bit more going
on a roll.
forward. At the moment, though, I do want to just say thank you to you guys for coming on. Tuck, as always, our antisocial general, I really appreciate you coming out.
Many thanks.
Bishop Steiner, the head of the Tharkad Catholic Church, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I hope I did
Bless
that
you, my
right.
son.
But yeah, Bishop is, I think a lot of you guys know, is one of the kind of leading designers alongside Mr. Scroggins for a lot of the lovely designs that we are seeing in front of us right now. So we're going to talk to him as things go on, but I will kick it back to Paul to finish his intro section that I kind of hijacked on him.
All good. So, so far this week, we've had some interesting times since Tuck got here on Thursday night.
Yeah.
Of course, those of you that joined us on Friday, we did Friday Night Aces. We had some fun with that, and then yesterday,
What a game.
we played a 16-turn Alpha Strike game. That was a reenactment of the second battle of our first battle of Harlech, I think it was, correct? Where Wolf and Waco finally do each other in, and of course, in that game that we played, we did film it. We did not live stream it, so it's going to be recorded for edited content for later release, both by Battlebound and Six Sides of Gaming. And what we're going to do with that is we are going to have it narrated by Tuck and myself from the perspective of each side. So that's something you probably look forward to seeing probably November-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. Give us a few weeks to get things tied away. On top of that, today, as Henny mentioned, we had quite the we had quite the day. We started off. Well, we got home last night from the Alpha Strike game. First off, at around 11:30. Of course, we get back. We have something to eat. By the time we get to sleep, I think it was like 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah, about that.
We're back up again at 6:30 in the
7,
morning,
yep.
and we are driving to Niagara Falls. So Tuck got to see Niagara Falls for the first time in person today. And the reason we went down there is because my father and my family, that's my hometown. They're in nearby Fort Erie, and we have a big property down there in Fort Erie. And because Tuck was wanting to film scenes for a episode that he's got coming up in the near future on Battlebound about the actual life-size hexes, what would fit inside something, and to demonstrate, how big these are. We had to have a property big enough to do it. Of course, my dad's place is big enough. So we went out there and we roped off a hex for 30 meters, and we had some interesting times getting some camera angles today. I'll let Tuck elaborate on that a little more.
I do like how, as usual, when it comes to anything Fox Network related or that we film for content here, Paul is in fact providing the terrain.
Absolutely. You know what? As usual. He has it absolutely right, kids. What I was doing out there is we were mapping out an actual 30-meter space of land so we can show you how so many different things fit inside the hex, even though you can really only fit one miniature in that space on the game board. But the rules allow for things like 2 tanks, a VTOL, a mech, a squad of infantry, a wing and ground effect, an aerospace fighter. So many things can fit in that one space if you just shrink it down to the proper scale. But first, if you're going to do that, you need the thing to put them in. So that's what we did, is we roped off this area where we could have have a hex. And then once we got all that noise done, well, somebody needed to take a shot of it from an elevated position. And, well, there was really only one person who could make the level 2 climb, I guess, and that was me. Because they had me climb up this gantry that, y'all, I looked at it and I thought, I'm crazy. God's going to have to miracle me up there. I tried it the first time. It didn't work. I couldn't do it. And they called Tex. They called him up just out of the blue, right? And he finally answered, and I went, all right, now I've got to do it. It has gone this far. And so I did, and I don't know how I did it. I'm not a great fan of heights, but I got up there, and then it was another adventure entirely to get me off. They got it to miracle me up and down. And finally I got off, and nothing bad happened. So, yeah, but I'm telling you.
He is here, surviving, alive, comfortable in one piece.
Proof of life.
So, House Davian, you do not need to invade us.
For those of you curious, like this has all been videoed.
I've got some good video.
While I was busy talking live with Tex on a video call, encouraging Tuck to climb up the cable antenna on the side of my dad's house. My father was actually recording the whole thing. So,
Oh, Lord.
for those of you interested, Tuck did make a post today on the Facebook group BattleTech International. I did comment on it with a couple of snapshots of the videos there. If you want to see if you want to see Tuck climbing up the side of my dad's house, it's quite entertaining. And on top of that, these videos will be obviously put into the show when Tuck does release it in the near future. So we had a good time with that today. And then, of course, we rushed back from Fort Erie all the way back up here into Cambridge, where the Six Sides of Gaming studio is, and patiently awaited for our friends Joe and Henny to arrive. And here we are. So it's been a busy day, and I guess we'll carry on here with the news of the day.
The question of the day?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, okay. The question of the day in honor of Bishop Steiner, and I promise this is the last time I will make a religious. I can't promise that. This is the last time I will try to make this the last time I make a religious joke throughout the course of this stream. But in honor of Bishop Steiner, I want to ask today, what is the canonical mech piloted by the Space Pope, the head of the New Avalon Catholic Church?
Okay.
So once again, that is what mech is piloted by the Pope of the New Avalon Catholic Church in universe.
And I'll be watching the chat.
All right, we do have a Davian and a Steiner here, so anybody Capellan watching is probably getting a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
They're just hoping it's going to break out into civil war, which was a joke we had lined up, and I just spoiled, so I apologize.
Dun, 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 dun.
I think I accidentally made it earlier.
Very silent mouse right off the bat knows the answer. It is the Regent.
Yes, that is correct. It is the Regent with a ridiculous hat on it.
And it
He just
actually
came
has
out
the
guns
hat,
blazing.
doesn't it?
He's shot
Yes,
from the
it
hip.
does in
right
fact
there.
have the hat. Please tell me that was not one of your redesigns, Bishop.
I can tell you for certainty, it is not one of my redesigns.
Thank you.
That's one of
I
Anthony's.
had expected so
and,
much better, and I'm happy to hear that. No, you've honestly made. Sorry.
Not a favorite of mine by any stretch.
No, you've honestly made
Sorry,
a few of.
not
Oh, there's going to be fighting in the back in the
It's all right. You've honestly made a few of my favorite designs in terms of the reworks that I know relate directly to you. One of them is the Sentinel. Not one of my favorite mech designs overall, but I think it is probably one of the greatest examples of a glow up from the original art to the current iteration. The modernization of it, they took it from being kind of a little bit awkward looking to something that looks very much like an actual military machine. And I like that. I like that a lot about the new designs. They're blockier. They're a little bit more intimidating. They look more like what a battle mech should.
So, while we're talking about designs, Bishop, how many of the new mechs and vehicles have you designed for the re-scene and the modern era of the plastic sculpts?
Oof. Right now, including some stuff that's either not been released or isn't been remodeled specifically for a miniature yet, like the Blood Reaper. I'm sitting want to say just slightly over 30 right now.
Wow.
Out of
Wow.
them. Really picked up a lot of the work during the Mercenaries Kickstarter compared to what I got to do for the Clan Invasion. So
So,
definitely
a
trending
quick
heavier.
question before maybe we ask about some specifics of some of those designs that you did. Of all the designs, not your favorite one, but which of the units did you have the most fun trying to recreate or reimagine?
Man, some of those got interesting. Some were actually a bit of hair pulling, but I really had a lot of fun with the Vulcan. Is one in particular that I enjoyed everything about, just the process, how it came out. Dervish was one that I'm proud of. I really liked
I
just some of the
love
little
the Dervish.
details on it, like the side sliding missile bay doors that I put on it, and kind of a little bit of me being obstinate and moving the lasers on its arms on purpose, even though that's not where they had traditionally gone, just because I was a little annoyed at Anthony for moving the Atlas's lasers from the top of the arms. So I put the Dervish's lasers on top, even though they're usually on the side. But hey, or we're supposed to be until the artist started not knowing how to read what Dwayne Luce had actually drawn. So,
Oh, that's fair enough. I mean, the Dervish is one of my favorites, and I'm really happy to see it. And the way it looks is phenomenal in this new one. Again, it has a bit of that intimidation sort of brawler factor to it that the classic Dervish didn't have in such a way. Even though it's more of a fire sport unit, it is kind of a shrunken, faster Crusader, so it is versatile at all ranges. This one looks like it should be.
My opinion on the Dervish came around so quickly, seeing the new design, especially when I had seen a couple. My experience with the Dervish largely came with a very old model being used against me, and me not being able to take it seriously.
Because it
Um,
looked like a javelin.
well, not only did it look like a javelin, I couldn't tell what way it was facing. I legitimately tried to get into the rear arc of a mech facing forward, because of the design of that particular model. So seeing the new Dervish is really just, it blew me away with the. I'm actually looking to get a hold of one because now I don't have one.
You mean a Dervish go back like four flats on a Cadillac, man. I love that mech. So when I saw the redesign, you can see Dwayne Luce's influence on you there, man. You know what I feel about that. I've talked to you at length about it.
I really like the Dervish myself. I've gotten to recently paint it, so for the last week, it's been one of the 4 units for the Bounty Hunter that we've been getting ready for our Anime North event on Friday this week. And I like the detail on it. It's got a lot of large panels on it, especially on the shoulders, where you can put a lot of good cool deckling or freestyling if you're into that. Obviously, we've been doing them as the bounty hunter, so I've been doing lots of checker patterns on them, which it has
patterns are
ample
so
space on it for, and the detail on it, like you touched on already, the open missile pods are really cool. I love the arm design where you got like the exposed barrel, but it's a giant. It's almost like a miniature Marauder arm on it.
Yeah.
It's with a tweak, and I really dig that when I was painting it. Like I was like, oh, I didn't even notice it the first time when I looked at it until I started getting into actually painting it.
Yeah, it's got
that
kind
was
of a
always one of my
reinforced barrel fist look to it.
Yeah.
was always a pet peeve on the previous versions is the Marauder or the Dervish has an SRM2 and a medium laser, but almost all the miniatures just had 2 barrels sticking out that front. Which I'm like, so is it a a semi-auto SRM2 or it fires 2 missiles down the same tube? How does this thing work? So
Yeah, right.
wanted to fix that definitely so it actually matched the record sheet.
Yeah, it kind of had the old Ostwar style paddle arms almost.
The
Uh,
talk about the design process about moving a laser out of spite. Can you give us a little bit of insight about the design process of revamping a lot of these old designs? Well, I got some specific questions here for you, but I figure if you give a loose rundown, and we'll ask that after.
I mean, we try to collect all the stuff that's been out there, canon or otherwise. We'll even look at some fan art sometimes, and then if there's something we really like from fan art, we will reach out and talk to that artist. In fact, Anthony's actually had some specific designs like the Flashman where he brought in that artist just for said design. Also, our goal is for everything to at the very least be considered a side grade to the MWO, although we would like whenever possible to quote unquote do better if we can on some. And of course that's a subjective thing. There's definitely mechs that Alex did better than we did, and there's some I think we've done better than Alex. But that's just what happens when you doing hundreds of mechs constantly. But yeah, we collect all that information, get a portfolio, all the old minis, if there's Dark Age clicks of them, all that stuff, and just kind of try to boil it down to what the person assigned to it considers the core aesthetic features of the mech. The things that just, when you think this mech, what are the things that pop to mind from it? And then try to work from there, keep the good and then shave away the derp, I guess.
That's a way of saying it.
So, you know,
So, obviously,
and
you might
there's
not
some
be able
stuff,
to-
some Wayne's things that age. Sorry.
I was going to touch on the design process real quick. You might not be able to answer this or not. The secret sauce of scale. How do you guys come up with the proportions on the units? BattleTech traditionally has never had an official charting of how big each particular unit is. There have been selections here and there, like in the Universe book, they actually say an Atlas is 15.4 meters tall. But other than everybody looking at it, was there a formula you
Which
guys used for
is
that?
something that changed significantly. So,
Pardon?
You still there, Bishop?
sorry, I seem to be losing you.
There you go.
Yeah, but what you said last totally broke up. Not sure if it was your end, my end. We'll blame the country in between us.
There you
United
go.
States probably did it to us. So, so could you repeat what you're asking? I got
So
going into the scale or proportioning, but then you cut out.
yeah, so in regards to scaling, obviously there's a secret formula. It doesn't have to be discussed. As Catalyst has never traditionally discussed official charts with, the Locust is X, the Charger is X, in height, width, and dimension. But there was in the latest Universe book release, there is a reference guide in the artwork in there, and then they say the Atlas is 15.4 meters tall, I believe is what it is. When you guys proportioned everything and you did it, did you have a guide that you had to work off of, or were you guys given a little more freedom to kind of ad lib how you wanted to do it?
Well, it actually goes back to when Herb Bias was line developer. There was a canon statement from him at the time that all the bipedal mechs in BattleTech stood somewhere between 8 to 14 meters tall. Now we decided, for the sake of whatever reason, to go slightly larger on the top end, but you'll find that like the shortest mechs, the Mercury and the Urban mech, for instance, still sit right around 8 meters. And obviously that also varies some, because if you have a walker pod configuration or something like the Stalker, your volume is spread out differently than a bipedal humanoid mech. So we do have a rough outline for the shortest and the tallest on that in those regards. But most of it in between that comes down to simple volumetric scaling. And then we will tweak it. Not sure the official term is by eye, but we try to keep things within a certain percentage on the volume, but we'll make adjustments as we feel something might look a little too small, a little too big by sheer volume, if it doesn't really seem to fit with its mates, so to speak. I mean, we actually have a line that Anthony keeps of every single mech we've done. And as we do another 55 tonner, for instance, we will, in the 3D scaling or modeling process, we'll adjust the scale according to the other mechs in the 55 ton bracket, compared to the 60s and the 50 tonners, to see how it sits there. And it's not perfect. And then there's some things where the eye fools you. Like by volume, the Argus and the Dragon are correctly scaled. To my eye, they both look huge for 60 tons. It is what it is sometimes.
Yeah, the dragon looks
But
very
yeah, that's
short,
most of
beefy.
it is we have that. It looks what?
The dragon looks very short but beefy to me, and partly that's the pose on the legs where it's running. But yeah, I do see what you're
Yeah,
saying about it being very
yeah.
large. But it's a dwarf built mech
Yeah.
if you're into
It has a
TNT as well.
lot of volume in the torso and shoulders, though, which really just makes it look really big. I mean, if you put a dragon miniature, for instance, next to a Lancelot or a rifleman, it's a beefy boy,
Sure.
you know. And then sometimes, yeah, sometimes a mech having more mass in the legs or less in the legs can also end up with a mech that looks like an outlier in comparison. But so yeah, we try very hard to keep things with scale. In fact, that's one of the biggest things that I was happy to be brought in on the project for, because I was a constant pain in Mech Warrior Online side for being one of the big ones to scream fix the scale all the time, because I hate, and I've always hated in the traditional Battleship game, the complete and utter lack of scale in the minis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was an issue a long time ago. With the original metal miniatures in the Raw
Oh God,
Powerful
yeah.
line, they were all over the place, and I think that's not any fault of the sculptors, because a lot of the times the artwork was limited back then. You only had 2D drawings of a lot of things, or maybe one three-dimensional drawing, and it doesn't show three-quarters of a back on what's on it, or how deep it is, et cetera, et cetera. And when the new miniatures came out, I was excited because as you just touched on with the video games, even though I don't play them, but with tabletop stuff, I always thought, hey, if they got new plastic miniatures and got them rocking, I was positive, the younger generation of players were gonna be very, very positive and warm and responding to the game of BattleTech. So it was a joyous moment for me when I saw the new minis, and hearing this now, that you guys have been scaling them roughly behind the scenes, and maybe one day, once all the mechs are mostly done, we might actually get an official chart for those who want to dig their teeth into that kind of information and data.
That'd be great,
Yeah,
especially for what I'm doing with that
I
project.
was
Sorry, Bishop, go
looking
for
at
it.
publishing. Yeah, I was looking at actually doing that, because that information's pretty easy to access, and it's not something that's specifically being sat on or hidden. It's just only so many hours in the day, and between working on things like cockpit guide, commission work to pay the bills, and all that, it's just not something I've had an opportunity to sit down and do the official breakdown, because we have the conversion on everything. That's why we know the Atlas is 15.4, even if I still am a little salty over that, because the very first line in the description of the Atlas is it's not the tallest or the heaviest mech. And yet, for some reason, until at
It
least
is.
I think the Annihilator came out, they insisted on making it the tallest, even though canonically in the past the Banshee had been taller than the Atlas.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
But hey,
And she baby.
there we go. And that was one of the things. It's like, well, the Atlas is a stocky linebacker. The Banshee was tall and skinny, traditionally speaking.
Well, I mean, you
So it
kind of.
made sense for a mech being 5 tons. Hmm?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
Sorry.
there. I was just adding to what you were saying. You kind of see that with some of, like, for example, the Wolfhound. For its
Hmm.
build, it's very tall for its actual weight class, and it's about, say, 2/3, a little bit more than the height of an Atlas, which I think is kind of appropriate for a mech that's supposed to be designed to be lean and mean like that. And I'm like remembering back to my Mech Warrior 4
Exactly.
days, that the height scale in that book, I think, had it at like 11.4 meters or something along those lines.
That's
And it actually
huge.
looks close to that if that's where the Atlas is designed to be 15.
So one of the mechs that
Mech Warrior 3 or Mech
one
Warrior.
one of the mechs that always drove me nuts on the original metal ones that was out of scale was the Hollander, and it's one of my favorite mechs.
Yep.
And I'm hoping,
Mhm.
Bishop, that you redesign the Hollander, because I do know you have your own fan art out there that you created at some point,
I've
and there
seen
are
it.
3D renders out there for people who do print to make that miniature, and I always thought it was pretty cool the way you redesigned it. It had that stocky kind of comic book look and pose of its fists like this and the big ass gun on it, and it didn't. It was short and stocky though, and that's the kind of thing like what you're touching on there with the dervish and with the wolfhound even,
Yeah.
right? It felt, when I saw it and I saw your drawings, it felt like, yeah, that's the Hollander.
It looks like it's bracing.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
exactly,
looks like it's
exactly.
bracing to fire the gun that it is literally
Well, and
built around /
it goes.
impaled with.
It also goes beyond aesthetic because we have players both in Alpha Strike and those who do the hexless tabletop where line of sight matters. And so if you
Yeah.
have mechs which are grossly out of scale, that really skews that. And you think,
for
for
sure.
instance, one of the worst offenders I would use was the old Ralpartha Direwolf, which was the size of a literal medium mech.
Yeah,
If you
that's
put 'em
true.
at, compared it to a lot of the other minis out at the time.
We've had
And that
definitely.
actually gives you a competitive advantage.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the scaling issue is definitely a thing when you're playing True Line of Sight. I've always played True Line of Sight since back in 1990 when we started playing. I've never been a hex map guy myself. I immediately started making terrain back in the day, and we played with the classic miniature rules that were in the BattleTech Compendium at the time, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, as Bishop has just said, like that was always a challenge. What we ended up doing was we just used a card that was level 2 and said, hey, this is your mech. This is what can be seen, and by the rules, and kept it simple because you have like a 6-inch tall Hollander, right, running around or whatnot, right?
A makeshift silhouette system, effectively.
Yes,
You were running.
Yeah.
It was you mentioned a little while ago. It kind of got buried in there, but one of the difficulties that I know existed previously was I don't know how much it exists nowadays with how the CGL handles design. The back of mechs being made for the purpose of 3D models are now it's part of the design process. The people who do the art, they're presumably consulted in detail about what the back of a mech is supposed to look like. There's no more guesswork on that, right?
I mean, it can be a little bit hit and miss on that. For the most part, I can say, like, in my own cases, I think I've done between 2/3 and 3/4 of the backs on my mechs. There's sometimes just for speed that Anthony might do it if something is being rushed and we're juggling multiple projects. But it also helps it with Alan, for instance, Blackwell doing probably over half the 3D models for everything. That there's just a lot of consistency and easy to kick in. But one of the things usually what we'll do is we'll do the concept artwork, which you guys have all seen posted, whether it's on the Kickstarters or other stuff. Alan, for instance, or Eliza, or one of our other modelers will start the modeling process, get the roughs done. Then usually, because it makes it so much quicker for us as the artist, we'll have them send us basically the naked back of the 3D model, and then like I just draw over what the details should be
okay.
and send that back to Alan or the other, and then sometimes Anthony might go just like he does on the fronts. He'll make his input and go, nah, let's change the jump jet nozzles from square to round on this mech. Or sometimes just lets it go through verbatim. It just depends on what we feel is best for keeping a consistent level quality feel. But also, some of the changes that we all have to make also comes down to what works with the plastic casting process. We have to think about what will pull from the mold properly. And so sometimes we have to alter the shapes just for the sake of molds too.
That-
So
that was a big topic of conversation between him and I on the way down when we found out you were going to be on the show. We were bouncing back and forth. I'm wondering about like, have you like, it was your question?
Yeah,
Mostly.
yeah. Was a design ever rejected simply because it wouldn't work in plastic?
I don't think we've ever had one rejected
Or
per se.
modified.
We tend to bounce back and forth, and we do modify. And there'll be stuff, whether it's the barrel weapons in front or some really complex architecture. Sometimes you can do it, especially on a larger mech, because it might be done in multiple pieces. Some of the smaller ones, you have to be a little bit more um, conscientious about what shapes you're putting in where, just because of thinking about how the molds will open for the parts or whatnot. And Anthony's worked with Leah Young long enough. English, yes, speak good. That he will usually pretty quickly on one of our initial runs, because we usually go through maybe 2 or 3 passes in most art stuff before we hit the final stuff, send it to the bosses to approve, blah, blah, blah. And then they give us feedback too, of course. Might get a 4th pass off that, depending on the feedback. But so in that, we sand out or work out any potential rejection issues along the way. So.
Yeah, because I'm looking at like some of the backs are actually extremely detailed, like the Ostsole, especially from the new KS, that has, like visible heatsink radiators, and you can actually see where the medium laser ports and stuff go. So I think it's really cool to kind of blow out that and see an aspect that is completely hidden in basically all of the earlier design work that's almost all exclusively from like a
The
front left
traditional
perspective.
ones had, nearly no back detail on almost
I was
every
going to
one
say,
of the
y'all
maps.
ever held those old Battle Droids miniatures that just have a flat panel for the back, and that's literally it, the old
Yeah.
Warhammer?
Really?
It's
Yeah,
also
there's
that
no
Leah
detail
has
on the back at all.
continuously modified.
To touch on with what you just said there, one of the things that the guys posed as a question to ask tonight was, what is the overall level of cohesiveness and design look for the setting? Is there any guidelines as far as maybe a particular era would design things in a certain way akin to how cars are designed? Like you have your muscle cars of the 60s and 70s, and then as the years progress, they become more streamlined. They become more whatever futuristic looking. They become more angular and rounded edges, more aerodynamic, et cetera, et cetera.
And moreover than that, it's you have a bunch of different artists contributing towards the same project of updating the art for all of these different designs. And it is impressive how consistent the look is between them, knowing that it's different artists. How is that achieved?
Yeah, we were arguing over
Well,
whether.
part of that.
Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry. Okay. There's just a lot of functions that go into that. Part of it is basically having an art lead that everything does get filtered through, and therefore he'll put his stamp or give us direction on stuff if we're getting too far off the beaten path. But part of it, I find it interesting that you used the illustration of like the muscle car era versus the 80s Econo box versus the 90s Jelly Beans.
Sure.
Because that's actually a very Americentric view. Because if you go back to the muscle car era, for instance, you go look at the cars from Japan or the cars that were driving in Europe or Russia at the time, and they were vastly different. And that's the thing I've always looked at is I think if we're looking at stuff from the same faction and approximately the same era, I don't mind some commonality. But even if you look at like go into the 90s and look at when the Dodge Ram came out compared to the Kleenex boxes that were the other American trucks at the time. There's always been that kind of variation, even within a faction, where I just look at, we're talking 600 years, 1,000 planets, more factions than I even want to try to keep track of.
Sure.
There's variation, and even on the mechs, one of the things that we can't really touch and do is you think like Thunderbolt is built by 5 different factories in the Inner Sphere or some such right now.
Yeah.
There's no way they'd all be building the same looking Thunderbolt. There might be some
You're
very
probably right.
solid similarities through it, but there would be regional differences just based on material, culture. Hopefully not as crazy and stupid as the whole Weebamoto cheese stuff was with the samurai mechs, or the idiotic totem mechs, which I still
I
loathe
like
with
some of the
every fiber of my being.
Weebamoto Kintaros and stuff like that.
Hanamoto Chi.
I really like. I think that that exact point about the 5 different factories are making the Thunderbolt over 400 years, 600 years Thunderbolt's case. But what I actually think helps this game's in continuity both in the canon sense and in the it's a 40-year-old game sense is you could pretty reasonably justify every art design for every mech being out in the inner sphere just by virtue of so many different factories working on these.
Yeah,
And
that's fair.
it means, when people say like, "Oh, I like this design more." Well, I like this design more. I actually think this is one of the few games where you can say they both work. They can both exist.
Yeah. 2 things can
Absolutely.
be true at the same time.
I mean, one of my biggest concerns will be that with the success and how well embraced the classic new scenes have been, or the reimagined unscenes, however you want to describe them, is that we're going to ignore 30 years of Battletech history in the favor of something that only existed for 10 years in Battletech history, which is basically ignoring the Project Phoenix redesigns. And I think that'd be a mistake because those existed in our actual game far longer than the Unseen ever did.
I do like the way.
And a big difference is, which some people find a bit controversial, the Unseen was something we borrowed from someone else. I don't like branding our identity on someone else's property and ideas. When people want to say, the Destroyed Tomahawk Unseen Warhammer is the face of Battletech. Well, if the face of our game is something we didn't even design, I don't think that's a great look, personally. I'd rather have it something like the Atlas that we actually did design ourselves. And I'd rather have the ability, which the whole Unseen fiasco finally did, to separate our versions from those stuff. Yeah, they were great for helping us get started. And if people want to use those still, great. Because like you said, we have room to use as any mini. There's, you can use a bottle cap. So you sure as heck can use an old Ralpartha lead if that's the mini you like.
Sure.
But I don't want us to lose the Project Phoenix. I'd like to see those get updated similarly too, because I do think, well, there are some that people might call turds or lemons. You look at any TRO, and there are some great designs, and there's some crap designs in every single era, every TRO.
I like the way
So
that you
why
guys.
not save them all?
I really like the way you've redesigned or incorporated some of the rescene designs as well. Because if you look at, I'll be honest, one of my absolute favorite models that I have found a way to include completely out of era on a number of my tabletops is the Battle Axe / Hammer Hands, which relates back very much to the rescene version of the Warhammer. And I really like that. I think that's one of the nicer looking models that's come out. Is there any plans to do that more with some of the existing rescenes? Will we see maybe a Project Phoenix version of it or something along those lines?
I'm excited. Go ahead.
Have you seen the Federated Suns pack that's coming out?
Yes,
Yes. Davian,
Yes.
baby.
We have the 9 Nias Thunderbolt in that, which originated as a Project Phoenix Thunderbolt design. And I actually remember when we got the project sent to us, I was kind of questioning, like, what, are we erasing the Project Phoenix version now? And that's one of the reasons it has a completely redesigned cockpit canopy that's based off the Project Phoenix version.
I'm so excited about that, mainly because my favorite visual version of the Phoenix Hawk is, I don't actually think it's explicitly Project Phoenix, but it is a result of it. It's not the one featured in Project Phoenix, but it was the 5L done with the one with the stealth armor. It is reminiscent of the Project Phoenix, or not reminiscent. It's a child of the Project Phoenix design, and it's amazing. So if that thing has a chance of ever reaching circulation again, I'm really excited.
Maybe being the model.
I mean, it is a rescene no matter how you want to look at it. And there's some of the Project Phoenix designs, like I am a complete diehard stan for the Project Phoenix Marauder. I'll admit the proportions were a bit janky, as Chris would, but the details were interesting. And I've always long said that if it had been brought into Battletech with any other name but Marauder, it would have been embraced because the artwork and design looks better than 80% of the mechs that people use on their table without any complaint. but the fact that you dared put the sainted name Marauder,
Mm-hmm.
it was almost an impossible task for it to go. But I look at ones like that, or I love, I don't know if you've seen Alex Iglesia, who does the MWO designs, had done an ink rough of the Project Phoenix Thunderbolt and just made it basically stockier to match the original Thunderbolt's proportions more. And it is gorgeous. And so, I mean, there's so many good designs that can be drawn out of it. And so often it's not the design as a whole, but there's ideas. Like TRO 3055 is one of my favorite. People complain, oh, it looks like a 5-year-old druid. Yeah, but there were so many really neat ideas in that art, even if the execution might not have been that good.
I bought
I see.
TRO 3055 this year, and I love it
Yeah,
for
one of my
exactly
most
that
prized
reason.
Possessions.
Yeah.
This is why we have you guys here to do things like that, to take those like rougher but cool design elements and try to modernize them and update them. And you know, I'm here for anything that has the word Thunderbolt in it. I'm gonna be completely honest, way too big a fan. I think me and Tuck both are. In fact, I'm going to run a little game for Tuck tomorrow that he's helping me field test, which is built around a Thunderbolt pilot leading it. So that'll be the last stand of, I keep wanting to call him Roger Kincaid. It's Ralph Kincaid, one of the Wolf's Dragoons. But we're going to have a little wave assault, and we're going to see how many rounds Tuck Davian can survive with 3 mechs against Lance on Lance of Curetans.
Let's find out.
One question I had for you, though. I want to know how much leeway you guys are given when it comes to these redesigns, because a lot of them I see that you're very much sticking to what is that core aesthetic, and then I see some of the other ones, like I love the redesigns on the Oss Souls. I think the Oss Soul, the Oss Rock are really, really beautiful mechs. And if
Stylish is the word I'd use.
yeah, but if you look at the original artwork on them, they're a little bit more egg-like. In fact, I think they're described as being one of the predominant walker pod mechs, is what consistently comes up as their description in lore, whereas the new ones are very much, they have a more streamlined kind of, bodybuilder-shaped torso to them, and I think it's a phenomenal change. But I just want to know how much work did you have to go to get that put through?
I mean, it's your mileage may vary per chassis. It depends on if one of the powers that be, the line developers, for instance, has a very strong attachment maybe to a design or a look. We might start from that perspective of trying to keep that in line just so that we actually will get it approved. Sometimes Anthony has a specific look. With a lot of the Osts, honestly, a lot of the details was kind of blending in ideas from the Project Phoenix, if you really look at them, especially in the legs, designed for some of the awesome mechs. So again, a lot of but there's also what mechs do people like versus what mechs do people not really care enough about that we can just do whatever we want, because there are some things that, as stated or as given when you look at it, are just kind of turds. The Mercury, for instance, was one of the most radical redesigns, and it was because, as I forget if it was Ray who put it that way or Anthony, nobody cares about the Mercury anyhow, so do what you have to do to make it look good.
And I really like the new Mercury.
That's important though too. Like the fans are obviously going to have their favorites. They're going to have the classics. Obviously, people are going to like, and they're going to want to. That's what made them popular. It's what maybe drew them to the game. I love everything you guys have pretty much done. The other thing I myself, personal aesthetic wise, have never been akin to, and it's nothing really to do with redesigns, but it's just with mechas in general, are the more rounded mechs, the ones that are more ovals. Actually, no, the Flashman is rounded, but it's got a lot of angles to it, so it
actually like
feels
Flashman,
that.
I was just giving an example.
Yeah. It's anything that's like bubbly kind of looking. I've never really been a big fan of.
Dragon Fire, for instance.
Say again?
I'd say an instance for what you're describing, I think, aesthetically might be the new Dragonfire. Very, very swoopy, dirigible, just a lot of curves that almost look out of place compared to the other mechs.
Yeah.
And some of that, there's some people, some of our fans are very anti anything round or anything curvy. for that, some of it comes down to the basic mech. Other things, I actually fought to keep the Enforcer frumpy looking. For instance, my outlook on it was it's the Federated Suns Trooper mech. It's a workhorse. It's
Exactly.
not a Ferrari. It's an
Right.
F-150 with legs, and so I didn't want to make it look like some Magnum PI flashy Ferrari mech.
It does
So
have a
some of it
nice.
comes down to the role. Some of it comes down to the individual artists if we have a vision on something. And sometimes we might catch an assignment. I think I was the second or third artist on the Crockett. And after about a week, I just sent it back in. They said, dude, I got nothing on this one. You're going to have to do it. And it took off, and we did a great Crockett, which is what we like. Is if it's not clicking, or if Anthony, after a few hits, feels we aren't getting there, he might take it over or give it to a different artist, just because the end goal isn't our ego, it's about the product.
Yeah, I do see like a little bit of what you say with the Enforcer. It's not just frumpy though; it also has a like photorealistic quality to it, looking like something that you could actually see a military design being. You're not going to see necessarily those soft lines on a military design because it's not being designed just for the purpose of aerodynamics. These aren't jet fighters. These are being built more like a tank. This is being built to hold armor and take fire. And you see some of that.
easy
It's
to
practical.
repair.
Yeah, it's practical.
Yeah.
Looks like it's wearing a helmet.
Which is my issue with the concept of totem mechs, or even the extreme samurai mechs, to be honest, is for Solaris 7, I can see people putting the time and expense to put this intricately crafted armor to give a very specific aesthetic shape. But for a war machine, and especially for clans which are infamous, we do not waste.
Yeah.
But you're wasting all this time and effort making this ultra sculpted armor, which then you're putting on second line machines, which are supposed to be going to your freebers as the
Right.
totem of your clan.
Soul
How does that
does.
make any sense whatsoever? That's why I'm a bigger fan, for instance, of the Kodiak 2 than the actual Kodiak, because to me it has the essence of a Kodiak without being Teddy Ruxpin or a Care Bear.
Winnie the Pooh.
And
No, Winnie the Pooh
Like-
is the Annihilator.
I loathe Balius.
Oh my
If
god,
there's
the
something
Balius.
I could destroy from canon, the Barak and the Balius would be that. Because I just think they are such stupid concepts and they look ridiculous. But
Contio.
say a lot.
Let's
You
not do
know?
this again.
Yeah.
So don't look for Bishop to be jumping at the chance to redesign the Wyvern.
Aw.
Hopefully you do
Wyvern
get your shot with
is-
the. Sorry.
So Wyvern's basic. I mean, it needs to be made to look like something, but it's probably one that'll get blown up. Or if I had to guess, I'd say might have elements from the XTRO versions or even the 2C brought in.
Okay, now we're talking.
As opposed to the more classic I'm C3PO.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's just you look at the classic. There's nothing there. That's an example of a nothing burger based design where you look at it and go, no one likes this. No one cares about this. I mean, you'll get that one guy, a random guy in the forum, who's going to scream bloody murder because it's his favorite mech in the world.
Sure.
Well,
Well, there's also the opportunity to take a really disliked design that's not popular, make it look cool, and all of a sudden everybody wants to play with it.
So the Sentinel.
and that does
Again,
work
to go back
in
to
multiple ways. Sentinel's one, the Jaeger mech. Jaeger mech gets a lot of crap, but if you make mechs look good enough, people are going to want to find, even if they're going to run all customs to do it, which whatever. It makes people interested in them. Whereas if you take bad mechs and leave them looking bad, people are only going to want to buy the packs that have the good min-max mechs in it anyway.
Sure.
Very true.
One of my favorite designs, actually, from way back in the day was the Jagger mech, like circa Mech Commander 2. That was one of my favorites, even though it was kind of blocky. I just like that big heavy arms Gundam kind of to build to it. But no, I really hope you do get your chance to, as Paul said, design the Hollander. And I think, in the tradition of the Lyran Alliance and Social Generals, with your last name being Steiner, sort of, they do need to throw the House Steiner packs at you when we do get around to having something the Steiner equivalent of the Davian Lance packs.
Got it.
But what specifically are you most looking forward to having your shot at redesigning?
Well, As much as you guys want me to do the Hollander, if I had a choice between the Hollander and the Jackal, I'd rather do the Jackal personally. I find it a
Okay.
more fun and interesting design. Um, I don't dislike the Hollander. I do think that it's a design that I think I might like less because it's such a form and internet darling that I just got a little sick of it a little bit. People overstating its effectiveness, I guess, just because it has a Gauss rifle. But so that'd be a definite one. I do find it interesting that for a person named Steiner, how many Davian mechs I've given glow ups to, compared to how few Steiner mechs I've done. Um, so I mean, I have on the record though, I've been telling Anthony from Go that I really want a shot at almost any of the TRO 3055 Interspear mechs. We've only done a couple, if memory serves, and compared to having done all the clan mechs for some reason from TRO 3055
And they're all
already.
so good.
Yeah.
Give me an anvil. Give me an anvil, please.
Yeah, and so those are ones I like. As much as I generally am not a big fan of the samurai mechs. I like the I can never say the name right. Hitasumo Cozy or whatever it is. The medium one with the heavy PPC. That'd be a fun
Sume
one to
Cozy.
do.
Let me see what.
Kaze.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, and for the most part, I just love doing a lot of the different unload. Like I don't do much clan, but I wouldn't mind doing like the Corvus, for instance.
Oh man, the Corvus. That's a deep cut.
I just have a thing for unloved 40 tonners, as you
Yeah.
might know if you look at the number of the 40 tonners I've done. Be
Can
it
I interest you in an
Sentinel,
unloved 45 tonner in the Goshawk 2?
Hmm,
I like the Goshawk 3 myself.
didn't we put a bunch of Goshawk 2 details into the Goshawk redesign?
You did, and it's there's a reason it's my favorite mech.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I would like to actually find a way, not that the original version had a cockpit you could actually really see in the artwork to begin with, but I just never quite liked the GI Joe. What is it? Cyber Neo Viper, whatever helmet
Yeah,
look
something like
thing.
that.
Cylon.
That one to me was an instance of it was too anthropomorphic in the head and body design, where I thought it needed something like a fixed cockpit to break the anthropomorphism. Um, I'm not a big fan usually of the man in armor designs. There are a few exceptions, the Charger, for instance, partly because the Charger is usually a terrible mech too, which makes it fun for me. But yeah.
I was just glad you did the Charger because I wanted Jeremiah Roses so bad.
Yes, the lesser-known Jeremy from IT.
And that's in the Legends pack. So there you go. Are the Legends 2 or Legends 52 or whatever pack we're
Right.
on now. But yeah, I mean, and hey, I got my Charger C that I got to use at Gen Con.
Yes.
An
That was
evil,
gorgeous if
evil
y'all weren't there.
But so yeah.
All right. I think we're getting a little bit towards our time here, so I do want to thank you for coming on, Bishop, and providing us with your insights to the design process. I really like a lot of the work you've done, especially this time out. Like I said, I am obsessed moderately with that dervish, so thank you very much for that. And I'm glad to see you got a chance to work on some of the vehicles too. The Warrior actually looks really, really nice. I like the detail that went into the helo here. But I think we are going to kind of wrap things up a little bit. Just a heads up, as I did mention earlier, Fox Network, if you are in the Toronto area, we're doing a big run at Anime North's Halloween event. It is Tuck's scenario that we're running, and it is kind of an homage to Five Nights at Freddy's, featuring both Snort's Irregulars and the Bounty Hunter facing off against
And
the
Critter Tag.
satirically created, and in this case, though, somewhat still terrifying.
So to touch on those critter tech mechs, Les, our
my
painting
gosh, yeah.
coordinator from Underground Painter's Desk, has designed us a beautiful baseball diamond, which is already done. That looks dilapidated, about 100 or 200 or 300 years old.
So cool.
For the critters to be a part of. And right now, he has finished sculpting 5 of the units as per the old school art off of the CGL plastic. So he's added to them, mouse ears, elephant trunk, fridge on the back on certain mechs. So those are in the process right now. I know they were primed as of yesterday, and they're being painted. They'll be ready to go by Friday. So we are looking forward to that. And we do thank Les for putting that together for us
Very much.
for Tuck's special trip here. Aside from Friday night, we will also be tomorrow at Sir Games Lot and Barry with Henny and Joe and Tuck recording another Battlebound episode.
That's right.
And then we will follow that up on Wednesday night with another taping of Battlebound at Harry Tarantula in downtown Toronto with Jesse K, Austin, and Scott running from our crew running those games down there along with the downtown people. So we are excited about that. And then, of course, that'll culminate with the Anime North event. And then we'll roll into the weekend, Saturday, Sunday with Tommy, myself, Tuck, the guys here, and everybody from Six Sides probably causing some trouble and coming up with some interesting things to film or concepts or games to play. With that said, I'll pass over to Tuck. Tuck can sign us off for the evening.
Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. It's been a pleasure to be here. Joe, Henny, it's been nice to meet you all in person finally. I'm looking very forward to all the cool stuff that we have going on. And yes, the Critter Tech homage is going to be great, folks. If you like what you've seen so far, do us a big favor and hit that subscribe bell down there. Turn on all notifications, and we'll see you next